Good afternoon everyone. I am Neha Khanna, Assistant Professor, Faculty of Juridical Sciences, Rama University. Today I am here to discuss about the topic law of torts. So, in the beginning we need to discuss what the law of torts is. The word tort is derived from the French word tortum, which means to be crooked, unlawful or to be twisted. Next, law of torts is a civil wrong. The Salmon provides definition that tort is a civil wrong for which the remedy is in common law action for unliquidated damages, and which is not a breach of contract nor a breach of trust and only a equitable obligation. So, by this we mean to say that law of torts is not a breach of contract and neither it is a crime. It is something different which is only merely a obligation. Now, the law of torts has two basic proponents. First is Salmond and second is Winfield. Salmond provides that we should term law of torts as law of torts, S, and Winfield provides that it is only a law of tort, T-O-R-T. Salmond provides the pigeonhole theory. He asserted that the legislators have provided a particular crimes which had been therefore provided previously by the legislators, and later on when there is any new crime which is being done or any new wrong in the society which is being done, that has to be fitted in the previously decided crimes which has been given by the legislators. Therefore, he provides the pigeonhole theory. Pigeon here means the newly created wrong and holes are the previously created wrongs which have been made by the legislators. But on the other hand, Winfield straight away rejected the Salmond's theory of pigeonhole theory, but rather he asserted that we can only term law of torts as a law of tort. Now, through this Salmond's definition, we can go on with certain elements of the law of torts. First is that it is a civil wrong. All the civil wrongs may not be called as a law of torts. Second, it is a common law action. Third, it is under unliquidated damages. So, damages are of two types. First is liquidated damages and second is unliquidated damages. Liquidated damages means where the amount has been pre-decided by the parties, and unliquidated damages means where the amount which has to be given by the defendant to the plaintiff has not been predetermined by the parties. So, it is not a breach of contract and not a breach of trust, and it is only merely an equitable obligation. So, from this definition we need to differentiate that how tort is different with the crime. Firstly, tort is against the individual. Crime, it is against the society or the state. Second, in tort the wrongs are of less serious in nature, and in crime the crimes are the serious in nature. In torts, action is taken by the individual. Because tort is always against the private individual, therefore the action would be taken only by the private individual. But in crime, the action is always be taken by the state, because we already know that it's a popular saying that crime is always against the society or a state. Next, in tort, the remedy is compensation, that is damages, but in crime, the remedy is imprisonment as a punishment, which means behind the bars. Now, the difference between tort and a contract, because from the Salmond's definition it is very much clear that tort is also not a contract. Therefore, we need to discuss the differentiation between the tort and a contract. First, in tort the duties are not decided by the parties. Here the duties would be decided later on by the society or by the court. In contract, the parties itself discuss the duties previously making the contract. Second, damages here are unliquidated. I have previously explained that damages are unliquidated and liquidated. Unliquidated damages means where the amount has not been determined by the parties previously. In torts, the amount has not been decided by the parties, but in contract, when the contract is being framed, the plaintiff on both the parties had to decide the damages, that in case of breach, the particular person or the defendant in any case had to give rupees 1 lakh or rupees 2 lakh or rupees 5 lakh, what so on, according to the terms and conditions of the contract. Third, duties are fixed by the law. At the first point we discussed the duties are not fixed by the parties, therefore it has to be discussed or decided by the law. And in third contract, it is decided by the privity of contract or by the parties. Now, we shall discuss the elements of law of torts. What are the ingredients or what are the prerequisites which will form the law of torts? How we can say that this particular wrong is under the whole of torts? Firstly, any wrong which is civil wrong. We have discussed in our Salmon's definition that tort is always a civil wrong. We have nothing to do it with criminal law or administrative law, constitutional law. Tort is always a civil wrong. Second, damages. Here I am going to make more clear what damages are. So, damages liquidated and unliquidated. Liquidated damages means where amount is predetermined, and unliquidated means where not determined, amount is not being determined. Third is, which is very important essential ingredient so as to make a wrong as a tort, violation of legal right. Violation of legal right must be there, which is very much important as an essential ingredient to make any wrong as a tort. Why? Let's take an example to discuss this. Say for example, a particular person on an election day stopped by someone, say B, from casting his vote to particular person Z. In this case, when B has stopped A for casting his vote, here A has right to vote as a constitutional right, as a fundamental right under the Constitution of India. So, here A's right was violated because he was not being able to give his vote to his particular favorite politician, you can say. So, here here A has been violated his legal right. So, this wrong would be committed, would be said as a tort. Fourth, remedies under law of torts. In case when there is any wrong, in case of every type of law, there is particular remedies available to the individuals or to the plaintiffs, so that they can avail from the court of law what further remedies they had in case of any wrong. So, the remedies under law of torts are threefold. First is damages, second is injunction, and third is restitution of property. Damages means compensation. Whenever there is any wrong committed by any particular person to any plaintiff, where the plaintiff's legal right has been violated, there the plaintiff can claim from the court of law the damages, that is the compensation, which is some sort of amount of money. Second remedy which is available to any plaintiff is injunction. injunction here means to stop. In case of nuisance, for example, if we take an example of a neighborhood in which a particular person A is creating some sort of nuisance to B, and B's legal right is being violated, of that is that right to life or liberty, right to live it peacefully. So now A here can be asked by the court as a remedy to B that you had to stop this particular nuisance so that B's right cannot be violated. So this is known as injunction. Third is restitution of property, which means to take the property back. So these three types of remedies are available in the law of torts, which is very much crucial so as to understand the law of torts in detail. First is damages, that is the compensation, which is the amount of money which would be unliquidated, which has not been decided previously by the parties. We had to make it clear. Second, injunction, that is to stop that in a nuisance case. And third is the restitution of property, to take the property back. The doctrine which is governed under the law of torts is ubi jus ibi remedium. This is very famous doctrine which needs to be understood in case we are studying the law of torts. Ubi jus ibi remedium means where there is a law or right, there is a remedy. Which means that whenever any particular right is being violated of any person, there comes the remedy against the person who has infringed that particular person's right. Now, two terminologies which is very much needed to understand under the law of torts is twofold. First, injuria sine damnum, and second is damnum sine injuria. Injuria sine damnum means injury without damage, and damnum sine injuria means damage without the injury. Injuria sine damnum is always maintainable under the court of law. If we are going to any court of law for any wrong in which the legal right has been violated but the damage has not been occurred, it is always maintainable under the court of law. But damnum sine injuria is not maintainable under any court of law. Injuria sine damnum means injury without damage. In law of torts, whenever we will say a word injury, it will always make legal injury. We had to sense it that injury always here means a legal injury, because in essential ingredients we have discussed that it is very much important that any particular legal right has been violated. If we had to make any particular wrong as under the law of torts, we had to make that there is always a legal injury or the violation of a legal right of a particular plaintiff. So here what happened, the legal injury has been damaged, has been done, but the damage has not occurred. In this case, it is just the reverse, which means damage without injury. Which means here the damage has been done, but legal right violation is not there. So in order to explain these two terminologies, we had to discuss some sort of case studies. In this, we will discuss Ashby versus White. The facts of this particular case is that A was asked to give the vote to X. X was his favorite politician, but X was blocked by C or some other miscreants to cast his vote to X. But eventually what happened, that X, his favorite politician, won. But rather, he was not allowed to give his right to vote. Here the right to vote was violated, and therefore A demanded some sort of compensation and damages from C and the miscreants, so that to book that wrong under the law of torts. And the court said that it is very much the case of injuria sine damnum, that is injury without damage. Here A has suffered no damage because he ultimately wanted to make X win, and X won that context of elections. But here what happened, that his legal injury has been casted on him, which means that his legal right has been violated, and therefore it is very much maintainable under the court of law. Second case under injuria sine damnum is Bhim Singh versus State of Jammu and Kashmir. The facts of this particular case is that Bhim Singh has to go, Bhim Singh was a MLA official, was a MLA in state of Jammu and Kashmir, and he had to go to attend any meeting related to MLAs. But some JNKs or we can say opposition's miscreants was there, and they stopped Bhim Singh from going to that meeting. That is very much important meeting. So in this case also right to movement, right to go anywhere was restricted by the officials of Jammu and Kashmir, and which causes Bhim Singh a legal injury. Here Bhim Singh has discovered or had faced no damage at all, but what has done, that is the legal injury, the legal right has been violated, in which the court ordered the state of Jammu and Kashmir to pay 50,000 rupees as a compensation to Bhim Singh. Now, damnum sine injuria. The cases which we can relate to this damnum sine injuria is, firstly, Gloucester Grammar School case. The facts of this case were a particular plaintiff, defendant, constructed his school in front of plaintiff school. A established a particular his school in front of the opposition's or defendant's school, in which, because of eventually which the defendant's fees had to be reduced and the competition grows on, which causes a very much loss to the defendant's school. Therefore, defendant asked in the court of law that A has committed a crime and has provided me a damage. But court here said that it is the clear-cut case of damnum sine injuria, where your plaintiff, your legal injury has not been violated, only you have suffered a damage, which means a loss in your business. And the competition can be given by anyone in the society or in a market. Therefore, it was a clear-cut case of damnum sine injuria, which is damage without injury. Here, this case was not maintainable in the court of law, and the plaintiff get nothing from the defendant, as there was no legal right violation of a particular person. The second case is Town Area Committee versus Prabhu Dayal. This case was very much under the category of damnum sine injuria, that is damage without the injury. The Town Area Committee versus Prabhu Dayal. Here in this case, what happened, that Prabhu Dayal constructed 16 shops over a building which whose ownership was under the Town Area Committee, and without the Town Area Committee's consent, he constructed 16 shops there. So what happened, Town Area Committee completely demolished those 16 shops, and Prabhu Dayal suffered heavy amount of loss and damage. Therefore, Prabhu Dayal goes to the court in favor of any remedy available to him, but in this case court said that it is a case of damage without injury, that is damnum sine injuria, in which you will receive nothing from the defendant. Why? Because here you have received damage but there is no legal right violation on your part, because you have constructed those 16 shops without the consent of a particular town area committee under whose ownership that those shops had to be constructed. So that's all for today. Next we will come with general defenses of torts in my next lectures.